Greetings. My name is Anna Ritter, and I'm going to present to you a brief overview of the Grid Method Mastery Framework. The Grid Method Mastery Framework allows teachers to facilitate a mastery classroom while allowing students to take ownership of their learning. In a mastery learning classroom, teachers break up their curriculum into a series of skills or instructional units. The teacher will usually teach a topic and then conduct an evaluation to record each student's understanding of that unit. The grid method is a self-paced, student-centered, mastery-based instructional framework. Students work through mastery grids created by teachers that scaffold and build understanding of content that is aligned to standards. Students move on only when they've shown competency. Within this classroom-based instructional system, differentiation and personalization of learning become easier than ever. Every teacher can identify exactly where a student is on their path to mastery. Why change? First and foremost, we've spoken continuously about student-centered classrooms. Despite this constant conversation, many teachers still don't know how to do it. I believe we can take advantage of the breakdown caused by COVID-19 to facilitate a teaching breakthrough. Additionally, if you believe that the person that does the work is the person that does the learning, then we must change. On a good day, teachers can reach most of their students. On a bad day, very little learning takes place. On a remote day, a virtual day, it's nearly impossible to hold students accountable. Some of the problems are students' lack of ownership in learning, teachers' failure to reach all learners, management issues, low student performance, and making content accessible in this age of COVID-19. The solutions are to hold learners accountable, make content more targeted and accessible, which is what the grid does, let the learner set the pace, and maintain high expectations throughout the mastery-based system. I've created an example, a technology learning grid for teachers. The grid is the foundation of the system and allows teachers to carefully create and develop a scaffolded learning path using Webb's depth of knowledge and state standards. Along with the systems and routines built into the grid method, students can work at their own pace through these grids. They don't move from one learning opportunity to the next until mastery is shown, normally between 80 and 85%. This ensures that they're being met where they are at, instead of where we think they should be. Learning opportunities are organized from left to right on the grid. They increase in complexity and provide a clear learning path for students that is aligned to the embedded learning targets within each row. Creating tiered learning targets. As you know, clearly stated and tiered targets that align to state and national standards are at the foundation of good instruction. It is through these targets that we can communicate to learners what they're supposed to learn as well as what they should be able to do with that knowledge. The grid method provides a workbook that you will find a link to on my resource page. This is provided for free from Teach Better. It guides in the unpacking breakdown of the standards into tiered learning targets that are scaffolded and accessible to students. Utilizing Webb's depth of knowledge in this process allows you to build content knowledge in a way that lets students truly understand content and master material. This assures that they are mastering foundational knowledge before moving on to higher levels of understanding. These targets will further guide the creation of both assessments as well as learning opportunities. This Webb's depth of knowledge chart shows the 4 levels of Webb's DOK, as well as a 5th level created so students can explore the content independently, utilizing cross-curricular connections and independent study practices. This chart should be used as a reference when creating tiered learning targets. The level of each target should coincide with a level of Webb's. Note that if you prefer to use Bloom's taxonomy, that would also be appropriate. Far too many students move ahead despite students not getting it. Each learning opportunity or grid includes a formative assessment. On levels 1 and 2, it ends with a formative assessment. On level 3, the strategic thinking portion of DOK, it ends with a summative assessment. Research has shown that most standards are written at a DOK level 3 level, and this is where the assessment, the summative assessment, should be placed to match this standard. A DOK level provides for extended thinking, and level 5, which is not a DOK level, they use it for independent exploration. Some schools call this a genius hour. As I mentioned, the initial design was for in-classroom use. A bulletin board might look something like this, where students move their magnets to indicate their progress. If we want to bring this up, in the classroom additionally, this is also what it could look like. Teachers use solo cups to indicate progress. Students stacked the appropriate color as they work through the grid. You see the blackboard there with the stars where kids are moving their magnets over. If we take this to the next level, we can have kids working online with a Bitmoji, if you will, or some kind of a emoji to depict something about them. Students move their emoji after they've been signed off on a specific learning opportunity. We can harness the power of peer pressure to get students moving along. Additionally, in a remote learning environment, using something like the Google Sheet can work in a similar way. I don't think we have to convince people that mastery learning should be done. I think most educators agree that students should prove they understand the concept before they move on to the next concept. It's usually more about the logistics. How do you literally make it happen? How do you track student progress? In the classroom, you can use a clipboard or a poster like in the previous example. In a remote learning environment, we can use something like this Google Sheet to work in a similar way. Each line on the Google Sheet can be locked down so that only the specified student can access it. There are additional components. Goal writing. Students write individual goals based on their progress daily. Students are asked to write the date, their posted learning target, and the activity they are currently working on. They're also asked to create a goal as to what they would like to complete or learn by the end of the class period. As a part of the implementation of the system and its deployment, this allows students to focus on their progress, learning, and it provides an opportunity for reflection on their work and mastery of the content. Grading. Recording student progress or competency is based on mastery of content within a standards-based instructional and grading system. Teachers can also assess student mastery of standards based on their progress within the mastery grid. The grid method can help any teacher effectively assess student mastery with flexibility to fit within various grading structures or needs. Additionally, the grid method has components that are created to make managing learner progress, identifying need, organizing resources, and providing collaborative and peer-to-peer learning opportunities easier than ever. I'm going to share now some scenarios. Scenario 1, a scholar doesn't complete a task before the class ends. In a traditional classroom, the student fails the assignment and moves on to the next task the following day, regardless. In a mastery classroom, scholar continues working towards mastery on tasks the following day until they show competency. Another scenario, scholar fails an assessment that you give. In a traditional classroom, teacher continues working through the unit with entire class and the learner falls behind. In a mastery classroom, the individual learner takes corrective action and shows mastery on assessment before moving on. A third scenario, a scholar finishes a task early before the rest of their classmates. In a traditional classroom, the scholar is given busy work or told to work quietly on something while the rest of the class finishes. In a mastery classroom, scholar continues working on next learning opportunities towards mastery of content or becomes a peer tutor. A fourth scenario, scholar isn't working to their potential or putting forth appropriate effort. In a traditional classroom, scholar is redirected and unfinished work is recorded as a failing grade. In a mastery classroom, scholars' own choice to not work towards their learning goals or continue working towards mastery. And finally, most of your students show competency based on an exit slip at the end of a lesson. In a traditional classroom, teacher moves entire class onto the next part of unit or instruction since most understand. In a mastery classroom, scholars who show mastery move on, while those who did not continue working on the previous learning target. Here are some examples that you can click into to see grids in these different areas. Grids can be created in every single area. Moving on to the next now. Mastery Learning Grids, a framework to guide professional development for teachers. We can create grids for secretaries, for security, for custodians. I think the possibilities are endless. The Mastery Learning Grid is a content delivery vehicle, or a pathway, if you will. It facilitates learning. It's good for both teachers and students. Teachers have done the heavy lifting already, which means they can use the lesson plans they've already created and just frame them out in this framework. It provides opportunities to build relationships. What I love most is that students will have more control over their pace and will be working on tasks based on their individual progress. It will allow for scholars to advocate for themselves. There will be increased individualization and attention. It's a win-win situation. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'll be glad to answer your questions. In addition, here are some additional resources that you might find helpful. Thank you for learning with me.